Brahma Gururvishnu Gururdevo Maheshwaraha Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trilokyam Sacharacharam Atpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Bandhushcha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidyadravinam Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Yata sarvani bhutani pratibhanti stitani cha yatraivo bhashamam yanti tasmai satyatmane namaha. So where are we in our text?
Chapter 4, number 23.
Chapter 4, number 23. Can you help us out, please, Puneet?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's chapter 4, that's right.
Chapter 423.
Yes.
Asannam Aranasyasya Bharya Mam Sharanam Gata Tvadvat Sa Prarthayamasa Jivo Bhartu Mritasya Me Maya Sid Mandapadasmat Tathaivangi Kritam Maya Mrita Sa Praktanankal Sankalpat Abhavat Nripaha. The wife of Vasishtha, whose death was impending, took refuge in me. Like you, she prayed to me, quote, "May the soul of my dead husband not depart from this hall." End quote. It was so granted by me. He who was dead became a king because of his former great desire.
So remember what happened. Leela is married to Padma, who's this hot king. They get older together, and she doesn't want him to die before she does, but he does. And so she's propitiated the goddess Saraswati to not have him leave his body. So rather than having him cremated, she lays him out on a bed of flowers. And then she says, "Where is he?" So then Saraswati takes her to this other loka, this other place. And we see a Brahmin sage, Vasishtha, and he has a wife, Arundhati, and Vasishtha's poor, and he's sitting there probably in the second story of his house. He's looking down and he sees a king passed by with his retinue, and he has the desire. It would be so much better to be a king and have money. So when he dies, he comes back as a king. So what's the import of this part of the verse? The physical body is a vehicle for the garnering of experience and for satisfying desires. So you chose the body you have, the parents you came through, all the craziness of childhood, everything that's happened. It's prarabdha karma, the karma of this lifetime. Now, we have karmas that are in abeyance, which have yet to express themselves. We call those sanchitta karmas. And if we are foolish, we go through this life and think, well, there are some good things and some bad things, but it would have been so much better if I'd been born in Florence and been a chef in a Florentine 5-star restaurant. Or, oh, if only I had been born with a different body, I could be a metropolitan opera star. Whatever it is. These are agami karmas, which we set up for the future. So that's what impels us into the next life. So Vasishtha had an agami karma. He goes, oh, it would be so much better to be a king. So when the prarabdha of his life as a poor Brahmin was over, in he comes as a king. Now, you don't need to believe in the doctrine of reincarnation. We can simply look at it, moving from environment to environment in this life, impelled by the force of the past and our deeply rooted belief that some change of circumstance is going to make it all better. And of course, many of these things are conflicting. Now, here's a subtle part of it that the scripture doesn't exactly address. Sometimes our issue is regret. We've done something in a particular life or in this life, and we have shame and guilt about it. We regret it. So, as it were, we come back not so much to punish ourselves, but I think at the deep soul level, we will come back as with the qualities of the person that we perpetrated against. So we can see what it was like. This making sense?
Yeah.
So if you've been a liar, a chief, and a thief, you may come back as a person who's robbed, beaten, lied to, lose all your money in some scam deal. Why did this happen to me? That's our karma. But the end result of these experiences is compassion. When we've experienced both sides of an issue, we see that people who do hurtful things, they're just like us. When we've done hurtful things, why did we do them? Because we've been hurt or we've been frightened. Now you know the underlying human motivation of all discordant, evil, I don't like to use that word particularly, deeds. There are no evil people. There are evil deeds. But the people are hurt and frightened and ignorant. To give you an example, there's a measles outbreak in Texas. Can't remember the name of the county, but it has the lowest vaccination rate of any county in Texas. Why does it have a low vaccination rate? Because people who are frightened think vaccines are bad. They're not evil people. They're just frightened. Now all of a sudden, unintended consequences. People in the hospital for reasons. So anyway, my point being, there's a lot of mixing and matching here. Many of our desires are in conflict with other desires. And this is the life we get. So this is all set forth as Vasishtha reincarnates as a king in some loka. Now, did this happen in the past? One of the things this story is going to work on is to do a mind warp on time. It's kind of like realities within realities within realities. These are with a small r. All right, going on. Next verse.
तस्मिन्नेव चिदाकाशे जीवाकाशतया स्थितः शोकेन कशिता साध्वी देहमुत्सृज्य दूरतः आतिवाही कदेहेन सा भर्तारमुपाययाओ त्वमेव सा सते भर्ता द्विजो भूपत्वमागतः. He remained in that same sky of consciousness as the space of the individual soul. The virtuous lady, emaciated by sorrow, casting off her body, went to her husband with the subtle or spiritual body. You are only that lady. That Brahmana husband of yours has attained to the state of being a king.
So, or what's her name? Leela. So Leela finds out that she's actually a reincarnation of Arundhati, Vasishtha's wife. So she's following this dude around, incarnation after incarnation. Now, if you look at traditional Hindu marriage philosophy, we are taught that you marry someone for 7 lifetimes. It takes that long to work it out. So she starts off as Arundhati married to Vasishtha. Vasishtha decides he'd rather be a king. Arundhati says, whither thou goest, I will go. Run, 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 run. So now she's Leela, the wife of Padma, the king. And so Saraswati showed her that. Notice she doesn't say prior life. She says another loka, another place. Going on.
Prakti sa smriti lukta yuva yoruditanyatha स्वप्ने जाग्रत स्मृतिर यद्वत् mriteraadhyashtaman dinam. That former memory of you two, which was lost, arose in a different manner, just as the memory of the waking state arises in dream. Today is the 8th day of the death.
Yes. So just like when you fall asleep and you enter into the dream, you don't necessarily remember the waking state. And the opposite is true too. You wake up in the morning, you may have a vague memory that you had a dream, but you can't remember the particulars. Nor can the dream of Wednesday remember the dream of Monday. Yet there are causative connections with it all. So I'm not clear whether or not this is the 8th day of Vasishtha's death or the 8th day of Padma's death. Let's see if she clears it up.
Deshadhairyam yatha nasti, kaladhairyam tatha nahi, etasyaham pitu putro, varshanyetani santi me, iti bhranti jagat yatra, mriti mohat anantaram, evam devya vacha shrutva, lila proche saraswatim. Just as there is no length in space, so also there is no length in time, that is, both are illusory. Quote, I am the son of this father. These are my ears. End quote. This delusion arises here in this world after insensibility of death. Thus, having heard the words of the goddess, Leela told Saraswati, the goddess.
Yes. So the idea here is just as space is something that's created by the mind, so also is time. Now, time is different on different planes of reality. So we tend to have sequence and duration in this Vishwa, this waking state world. You know, class starts at 7:30. I try to end it at 9. We have a 20-minute meditation that's got sequence and duration. In the mental world, in the subtle world, we get sequence, but there's a whole different sense of duration. The best way to illustrate this is haunted houses or haunted castles and things. So when someone dies, if there's been a trauma, a violent death, or a deep emotional attachment, sometimes you get what I would call a breached death. You know, you can have a breached birth. You know, the breached birth is when the baby is sideways and won't come out all the way. You've got to intervene to get the baby out. Well, people can have problems passing over. And what happens is the grosser parts of the subtle body stay, for want of a better term, earthbound, attached to this. Now, I love the movie The Sixth Sense. Any of you seen it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I highly recommend it.
Okay.
So this little kid who says, I see ghosts.
Right.
I see dead people. I see dead people. And so they're like moving through these things, and the dead people can see the living people, but the living people can't see the dead people. And frequently the dead people don't know they're dead. But someone can haunt a house or a castle for hundreds of years. So on that particular plane, there is sequence. Things happen after another. But duration is different. They don't experience it as hundreds and hundreds of years. Oftentimes, then it gets like repetitive. The thing, you see the lady walking down the hallway for hundreds of years. Same thing, she keeps walking down the hallway. So time and space are different on different planes of existence. Now, the astrophysicists are even finding that time isn't so concrete even on this plane. I watched a YouTube video where they were saying that if you had a rocket and it was headed towards Alpha Centauri, which is, I think, our closest star, and it was only going at something like 1/4 the speed of light. It would take 100 years to get there and 100 years to get back, traveling at 1/4 the speed of light. But you would only experience 200 years on the spaceship, but it would be 1,000,000 years on the Earth.
Wow.
Yeah. Time is far more plastic than we think, even in the waking state reality. We are also beginning to find the mathematics, at least, for multiverses. This may not be the only universe. And maybe simultaneous universes going on that we can't perceive. What the scripture is saying, all of them are imagination in the end. So Arundhati becomes Padma, becomes Leela because of her desire. Vasishtha becomes Padma because of his desire. All happening in the space of the mind, the space of consciousness. Going on.
Sargam Brahmana Dampatyo Tammam Naya Maheshwari Evam Ukta tu sa praha Deham Muktva Bhavamala. Great goddess, lead me to the world of the Brahmana couple. Thus told, she, the goddess, said, become stainless by leaving the body.
So what she's done now is she's going to take Leela not back in time, but to another loka. Loka, we get the word location from the same root. We get the word locus in Latin. It means world or people, a place, a reality with a small r. It's interesting. When you see the word loka used in the Gita translated for ISKCON, they translate it as planets, going to other planets.
Well, would like the dream state, waking state, would those be different lokas?
Yes, they are lokas, of course.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
So anyway, so she wants Saraswati to take her to the loka of Vasishtha and Arundhati. Well, now is this going into past incarnations? So if you go to have a past life reading, are these past lives in linear time or not? Again, I love the movie Inception,
Yeah.
where you have dream states within dream states within dream states, and they get lost. They can't find what's the real world. Well, what yoga says is there is no real world. They are all like a dream. And in these worlds, they have an internal logic, an internal world of cause and effect, which from the viewpoint of another loka isn't true. Clearest example of that is people who have flying dreams. You have a flying dream? Ever had one? If you have, it feels very logical in a flying dream to be able to fly.
Right, you don't even question it.
Yep.
You just
And you know
can.
how to do it.
Well, and lots of dreams are like that.
Yes.
It's not just flying, it's like from the perspective of the waking state, what's going on is impossible. But in the dream, you never question it.
Exactly. And in the dream, it appears to have a logical cause and effect, which is just as valid as when I turn on the switch, the light goes on.
Yeah, no different.
Yes. So cause and effect is imagined. If you read literature that goes back more than 200-300 years, medicine is all about the humors. We have to bleed someone because there's too much heat. That was very real for people. Now we believe in the germ theory. It's a workable relative reality. But if that be true, then how does miraculous healing take place? My old boss, Father Mark, was on a pilgrimage to Lourdes. I think it was Mark. It might have been Harry. I think it was Mark. Anyway, so he was in line and stuff like that. And there was this lady in a wheelchair who could not walk. She was a paraplegic. And someone had asked Mark to push her wheelchair at Lourdes. So he's pushing her wheelchair. And as they get close to the grotto, she all of a sudden has this experience. She gets up out of the chair and starts walking. Now, to an MD, how do you explain it? See, cause and effect. So these are just assumed causes that work in a particular loci. All right, going on.
Achetya chidrupamayi paramam pavanidrisham avalambya cha pashyava sahasarga manargalam. Become of the nature of pure consciousness, free from things perceived. Having recourse to the supreme and pure perception, we shall see together the world unlocked.
So when a yogi knows Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, Chidananda Rupaham, my form is bliss consciousness. And they know what's the truth of this world. It is all just thought, vibration held together by thought. What appears as a physical world is just simply grossified thought. The way I like to demonstrate this is if you close your eyes for a moment and visualize an elephant, and you open your eyes, you know that the elephant is just an image in your mind. It's not real, it's not substantial. But if you have a dream about an elephant from the viewpoint of the waker, the elephant is imagination in my dream. Oh, such a weird dream. I dreamt I was riding on this elephant. What do you call the thing on the back of the elephant where people ride a howdah? What's it called, Puneet?
I'm not sure.
You know, with the seats in it where you ride on an elephant if you're a Raja or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, dreaming that. So the whole point is, why does the elephant of the dream seem real to the dreamer? First, we do not realize we are dreaming. There's a Varana Shakti, veiling power. Then, when the mind imagines the elephant, it appears to me like it's real. And the thunderous message of this chapter is this is no different. Break down the deeply rooted belief that the world that you're seeing is real. Only the self is real. Brahma Satya, Jagan Nitya. Brahman alone is real. The Jagan, and that includes all the various lokas. Mithya, illusion. Vaitatya, false. Swapna. Okay, so again, this is literary device. I don't think there are super magic mantras you can do to have Saraswati come and take you on an astral trip. But you might, who knows? Next verse.
Ativahika evayam twadrishay chittadehakah adi bhautikaya buddhya grihita chirabhavanat. This mental body is only subtle or spiritual. By long contemplation, it has been understood with the notion of the physical by people like you.
Yes. So, what is the difference between my subtle body, or in the West they call it an astral body, and my physical body? It's only my deeply rooted belief that the body is real, that it's caused by the egg and the sperm, that it's nourished with food, that it grows, it gets sick, it goes through all this stuff, and that it is pleasured and pained by a world that is other. And what the scripture here is saying, it's all just the play of consciousness. What is this world? It's nothing but the play of consciousness. How do all the names and forms come about? Sankalpena, by means of imagination. Next verse.
Vasanatanavam munam yadate sthitimesyati tada divahiko bhava punareshyati dehake. When the thinning or shredding of mental impressions shall certainly arrive at your natural state, then the notion of the subtle or spiritual will again appear in the body.
Yes. Tana vasana, with the thinning of the deep mental impressions. When that is achieved, then I see, oh, I am that space of pure awareness. The personal sense of self is not real. And the body is just a mental projection. Now, we have in the West various forms of spiritual mind healing. They basically come from two sources. One of them comes from a French fellow by the name of Mesmer, who discovered hypnotism. They used to call it mesmerism. And I won't go into the long story, but there was a long tradition that followed him of people going into hypnotic trances, doing hypnotic suggestions to people in various ways, and they would get well. The other great stream of it comes from a fellow by the name of Thomas Troward, who was a British judge in the British Raj in the middle of the 19th century. He was actually born in India. His father was in the British civil service. He went to England, was educated in law, came back and was a civil judge. And the biographies say he studied the native languages. My personal suspicion is he studied Sanskrit as well. And it was clear to me that he had some contact with a guru, or at least a jnani of some sort. And my suspicion is it is this text that he was exposed to, Yoga Vasishtha. Because when he returned to Britain, he lectured on what he called the creative process in the individual. He wrote a book called that, The Creative Process in the Individual. Better book is his Edinburgh Lectures on Mental Science. They're not easy reading because he writes like a judge. It's very legalistic. But anyway, one of his students was Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science. So all of the people who eventually get trained in science of mind, who do scientific mental healing, all of them eventually trace their origins back to these two sources. But the whole thing is based on the fact that the body is not solid, concrete. There's only secondary cause in the body. Germs, bacteria, stuff like that. We do not deny that those things appear to happen. But a healer goes back to first cause, right where the trouble seems to be, there God is. What appears as a person's body is just vibration held together by thought. It's only a grossified form of the mind. And thought can be changed. Thought responds to thought. That's how it's done. And I'm pretty convinced that Ch4 got his basic ideas from Yoga Vasishtha because it's so clear the way it's put out here. And it's not just physical health, it's other aspects of our life too. All of it is nothing but imagination. So one person may see, oh, it's gloom and doom, terrible world. And that's a sankalpa. That's what they experience. I don't know about you, but I love the phrase, I live and move and have my being in God. It's a beneficent universe that conspires for my well-being if I let it. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. Sarvam kalvidam brahma. All this is verily God. That's my world. So in the beginning, we spend time doing some thought replacement. If you've got a lot of really deeply negative thinking, we might do a little work with opposite idea. Especially the Raja yogis work hard on this. But this is the essence of becoming adhikari, a fit student. We work on that. And then we work a lot on changing our relationship with the mind. I am not my thoughts or feelings. I'm not the body. I'm that crowned being. But then the yogi begins to see the fundamentally creative nature of the mind. I don't know if they still have them, but in old-timey days, they used to have pasta machines. Do they still make those?
Yeah, where you make pasta?
Yeah.
Sure.
And I remember one, there was like a bin where you put in the dough.
Yeah.
And then you You turn it on, and there
Yeah.
was a die.
Yeah.
And you could do rigatoni, lasagna, spaghetti, angel hair. Is that they still do that?
It's called extruded pasta.
Yeah.
Instead of rolled, like sheets of pasta.
Extruded pasta.
Yeah.
The human mind is like extruded pasta. And the bin is always full of the fundamental essence, the prakriti of the universe. And the die is my thought life. And the extruded pasta is the world I experience. Now listen very carefully. There's no off button. I'm going to take a break. Yeah, I take that back. If the mind is free from thought altogether in samadhi, then it's not happening. But as long as you're thinking, the law of sankalpa, any sankalpa consistently maintained that's not contradicted or conflicted tends towards grossification, be it negative or positive. Now, thank God, most of the people out there, one of their sankalpas is, my mind isn't creative. Or it'd be a lot loonier than it is now. They literally use the law of mind in action to disempower their own mind. No one, we don't get arrested for our thinking. Oh, but it's powerful. So don't be afraid of your mind. That's you don't want to have scrupulation. Oh my God, I have a negative thought. Oh, terrible things are going to happen. No, don't be afraid of your mind. But it is of value to watch the mind, understand the fundamental content of the mind. Because the mind is powerful. Now, I had a student, and she began to learn about this law. And she had some very unfortunate love affairs. And there was a particular fellow that she thought had really done her wrong. So she decided to do a sankalpa to ruin and wreck his life. I did not know she was doing this. And when she told me she was doing it, I said, stop it. That's black magic. And the problem is the quality of any energy you put out, guess what happens? It comes back. That's why the people who use the law of mind in action in a destructive, hateful, angry, negative way, pretty soon get very sick.
And even if they don't, they're living in a state of horror.
And they literally vibe their body out of existence.
Yeah. You can't live that way.
So these are all the corollaries that this book is implying. Some yogis completely detached, stand back, watch the universe. It's all like a dream. have no involvement. Other yogis know that it's like a dream, but feel it doesn't have to be a nightmare. And for the good of humanity, do some dream shaping. One experience that so many of us have. If you go on a Vipassana retreat, most of them end with doing the metta meditation.
Yeah.
May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be happy. May all beings be liberated. Why the heck do you think they do it? And why do they do it at the end?
Because everybody's tuned up.
And the quiet mind is the most powerful mind. It's not about, make it happen. That's actually a psychic isometric. That's one part of the mind pushing against another part of the mind. It's not powerful at all.
Well, also, I notice when the mind is very quiet and like something like loving kindness meditation is done, it feels very real. There isn't anything contradicting it.
Yes.
Saying, "Oh, this isn't possible."
Exactly.
It's just
exactly.
Yeah.
And see, that's when it gets conflicted. When
Yeah.
you think it's impossible.
Yeah.
You see.
Yeah.
But and when groups are doing this, it's more powerful.
Yeah.
So the question, who is doing more to make the world a better place? The activists marching around the lake with signs full of anger, or the people at the end of a Vipassana retreat doing loving kindness meditation? It's a very interesting question. This is why I've come up with another one of Jim's slogans. The awareness of suffering is an invitation to prayer. Now, a yogi doesn't pray the way other people do. Other people do petitionary prayer. Oh God, please help Aunt Mary. Oh Jesus, come to her. That's fine. If you believe that it helps, it will help. But a yogi understands the power of sankalpa. So in a quiet mind, I see so and so perfectly at peace. I know there is no physical body. It's not true, it's not real. It's only a body of light. It's a spiritual idea. I see this person's body whole, perfect. Every system working perfectly. Every organ having its own divine intelligence. It works in an order and perfect way. This word dispels all fear. If there's any regret, something they're holding on to, need to let go. This is easily released now. I see this person at peace, aware of their true nature. Swaha! So it is. Om Tat Sat. That's an example of a sankalpa. And then you let it go. Any thoughts on this? All right, next verse.
वासनातानवे तस्मात् कुरु यत्नम् अनिन्दिते tasmin prodhim upayate jivan mukta bhavishyasi. Therefore, faultless lady, take effort in shedding mental impressions. When perfection is reached in this effort, you will become liberated while alive.
And this is an echo of what Shankara says in the Vivekachudamani. It's the annihilation of the vasanas here and now that's considered liberation by the wise. When all the vasanas have been thinned, the knowledge of the self is clear. Because the Varana Shakti, the veiling power of a vasana, is no longer there. Next verse.
Section 3 Brahmabhyasaha, the practice of the realization of Brahman or the Supreme Spirit. Lilovacha atro pakurete bruhi kobhyasa kidrishothava sakatham poshamayati pushte tasmin cha kim bhavet. Leela said, tell me, which or else of what kind is the practice that helps here in the realization of Brahman? How does it undergo advancement? What happens when it is grown?
So she gets kind of by grace, a little trip with Saraswati, but now Saraswati wants to help her on her own attain moksha. And Leela says, so how do I practice this? How do I advance? What's the process? Let's see what the goddess says.
Devyuvacha tachintanam tatkathanam anyonyam tatprabodhanam etadeka paratvam cha tadbhasam vidurbudhaha. Thinking of that, talking of that, instructing one another of that, and having this as the one highest goal, wise men consider these as the practice for realizing that.
So Swamiji used to call it reveling in the halls of Vedanta. Thinking about the spiritual path, sharing those ideas with one another, talking about it, remembering it, reading about it, then ultimately long and continuous meditation on essential nature. Going on.
Atyanta-bhava-sampattau jnatu gyeyasya vastunah yuktaya shastrayatyante yete brahma bhyasena sthiraha. Those who strive by reasoning and by scriptures in the accomplishment of the complete non-existence of the known objects and the knower, they are the firm practitioners of the realization of Brahman, the ultimate reality.
Yes. So, what is it that we need to do? We must achieve the non existence of the phenomenal world and the non existence of a personal sense of self. There are layers and layers of meaning to this. So, we start with the phenomenal world, with a meditation on impermanence. Everything in this world dies, comes out of non existence, may exist for a short time, and then out it goes. All people, all relationships, all homes, all jobs, cars, everything is impermanent. But then later on, we begin to examine what is this world and how has it come about, which is what this particular text focuses on so much. We begin to start to entertain the idea the world isn't as solid as I thought it was. The world isn't inherently joy-giving or misery-producing. The world is neutral. And in the end, the world is mithya. It's illusory. Like a dream, like a hologram, like a movie. Yet there's a substratum to the world. Existence, a being, which never moves, never changes. And no personal sense of self is real. I think I'm a person, I'm deluded. Starting from the body up to and including the form of Brahma, the creator, meaning I think I know something very spiritual. All of them are false. This is the practice of Vairagya. Viveka Vairagya Cha. Discrimination and detachment. Now, when we have the destruction or the disappearance of the phenomenal world and the personal sense of self, we always present it in two ways. The first, in the state of nirvikalpa samadhi, when the mind ends, the individual knower and the phenomenal world are gone. It is like deep sleep in that way. In deep sleep, your ego is no longer available, nor is the perception of the world. But the mind is still covered by the darkness of ignorance. Samadhi, even the ignorance is gone. But the more useful description in the end, just like mirage waters in the desert, in ignorance, my senses report water and my knowledge is water. But I keep driving and the water recedes. So I have an insight. My senses continue to report water, but my knowledge is heat waves off the sand. So the fool sees the world of name and form and thinks it's solid and real. Thinks I am the body. The woman of wisdom sees the same world, same body, but knows it's all imagination. Don't take it seriously. Seen, but not real. And we practice this. This is jnana abhyasa. In program, one of the things we're taught to do is say a few prayers. One of them is what we call the third step prayer. We pray to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand God. And oftentimes the newcomer who may be atheist or agnostic will say, I don't believe it. I don't feel it. So what does the old timer say? Doesn't matter, it's okay. Start by just saying the words. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to agree with it. Now, we yogis know why this is powerful. Because mind and speech are connected. If you start by just saying the words, in time the mind will follow the speech. And you begin to feel it. You'll begin to understand. So you may think the world is concrete, real, substantial, and it really bugs me. And I'm a person and I've got issues. But what Yoga Vasishtha is saying here, start by entertaining the opposite idea. You start by saying the words. No. What the scriptures say is the world comes about by means of imagination. There is no personal sense of self that's real. It's an illusion. Even though I don't feel it, I'm not the body. I'm the knower of the body. This is called jnana abhyasa, the practice of knowledge. And when Shankara addresses this, he uses this image. So in the monsoon, when the ladies go down to the river to get the water for the house, great big huge jars, they dip the jar into the river and there's silt suspended in the water from the monsoon. So they take the powder of the kataka nut. Modern day, they use alum. There's dirt in the water. So what do? Add more dirt. You put in the kataka nut powder. And it creates a surface tension. And it collects all the silt. And then it falls down to the bottom. And then they decant the pure potable water into another jar. So the thoughts of truth are like the kataka nut powder. They're a special kind of thought that negates and removes deeply held conviction in a personal sense of self and the concrete nature of the world that causes my mind states. That's the jnana abhyasa, the practice of knowledge. In the end, we drop that, of course. Okay, it's 9:00. What verse are we on for next week?
38.
38. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Before we leave tonight, I want to stress one more point. We do not work for other people doing sankalpa without their permission. We don't know what their soul's journey is. What I will say to people, would you like me to pray for you? Oh, please, Jim. Then I know they have an intention to be free. But other people, nah. But you don't get codependent. Oh, I think my sister should, blah, 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 blah. We don't do that. We don't. That's trespassing. That's invasive. All right, that's all I've got to say about that.